U.S. and Cuban government officials are going to be sitting down for the first high-level talks in nearly 4 years to discuss possibly resuming agreements on migration between the two countries. This meeting comes as more Cuban migrants are trying to come to the United States. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says it has detained nearly 80,000 Cubans at the southern border between October and March. That's more than the number of detained migrants from Central America. Coast Guard says it found more than 1,200 Cuban migrants at sea during the same period. This is a very dangerous trek. The Cubans are willing to leave their island on makeshift boats or rafts trying to get to freedom. Joining us now is Carmen Cecina, reporter for NBC News Latino. Carmen, it's great seeing you. What are both sides apparently doing today during these talks?
Well, the U.S. wants Cuba to start accepting deportations of Cubans. They largely blame Cuba for the economic crisis and the human rights situation going on the island. Whereas Cuba, on the other hand, blames the U.S. They say it's not only the U.S. embargo, but it's also the fact that the U.S. stopped issuing 20,000 migrant visas per year about 4 years ago when there were these mysterious health incidents that took place in the U.S. Embassy in Cuba. So Cuba says they don't need to accept deportations of Cubans because they are largely leaving legally from Cuba. Nicaragua, a close ally of Cuba, stopped requiring visas from Cubans back in November, and that's when the exodus began. That's when Cubans started going to Nicaragua legally and then making their way to the U.S.-Mexico border. So those are the two arguments that both sides will have today. Jose?
Well, yeah, that's interesting, Carmen, because Cuba is one of the few countries around the world where you need permission to leave if you're Cuban. In other words, a national has to ask the government for permission to leave that country. You've talked, Carmen, with Cubans who just made that trip, as well as organizations in South Florida trying to help them.
That's right. So the organizations in Miami are grappling with the soaring amount of Cuban migrants that are arriving here in Miami. I spoke to one activist who has been doing this for 30 years, and she says she's never seen anything like this. I also spoke to a young migrant who's 25 years old. He arrives about 1 month ago from Cuba, and he left because he was fearing persecution. So he did not want to show his face during the interview or reveal his name because he still has family in Cuba, and he feels they may be targeted by officials in Cuba. But let's listen to what he told me happened to his friends after they tried to plan something on a WhatsApp group.
Se nos tiraron y se llevaron presos amigos míos. Se llevaron presos 3 amigos míos. Uno le dio 5 años, al otro le dieron 3 y al otro le dieron 1. Y aparte se llevaron 5 o 6 más presos. Lo que a eso las condenas no fueron tan severas, pero así fue. Y por esa razón yo me vi como que medio perseguido y me fui alertado para poder tomar la decisión de salir del país porque tenía miedo de quedarme ahí y que me pasara algo.
Jose, so this migrant and his friends were not able to protest during the historic protest that took place on July 11 last year. So they tried to, they weren't able to protest because they said that there was a heavy police presence and they were just not allowed to leave their house. So in the following days, they tried to organize something on a WhatsApp group, but pro-government supporters joined that WhatsApp group and basically ratted out his friends. So a bunch of them got arrested. 3 of them already got sentenced. One of them got 5 years in prison for having planned this protest. And that's why he's here today. Jose?
5 years in prison for thinking about organizing a protest. Tells you all you have to know.
Right.
Carmen Cecina, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jose.